Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a top-notch show for you today. We're going to start out with a question. Did a New York decision to squelch their primary, did this in fact help, hurt, possibly tank Joe Biden's chances for being president or being the nominee for that matter? And we'll explain that in just a moment. Hillary, the Hildebeest man, she snuggled up to old Joe yesterday in virtual reality. She endorsed Uncle Joe Biden, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that may or may not mean. And now China is on a full-bore public relations campaign saying, hey, don't blame us. We're not the ones that are responsible for this pandemic, because they don't want to pay any money, and they're worried about that. But we start with an article from the Catholic News Agency. Analysts, did New York Democrats just tank Biden's nomination? On Monday, officials in New York announced the cancellation of the state's Democratic presidential primary, calling the event essentially a beauty contest and a risk to public health in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the only two people that supposedly were still on the ballot was Bernie and Joe Biden. I don't know, a beauty contest. I mean, maybe that's a good way to describe it, but I don't think there's a winner in that one for sure. But you may remember Bernie Sanders, when he said he was suspending his campaign, said he not only did he want to remain on the ballot, but he wasn't planning on giving up any delegates just yet, and wanted his voters, even though he said that he had no path to the nomination, he wanted his supporters to get out and still vote for him. And he specifically mentioned the New York primary. In fact, even after he dropped out, Bernie was doing some work in New York to push the vote up for him. So he definitely wasn't too happy about what happened. While New York Democrats cited the inevitability of Joe Biden's nomination for the party's candidacy as justification for calling off the primary, it could actually make the former VP's spot on the ticket anything but a foregone conclusion. That's kind of interesting that they would even propose that, because you keep hearing that Biden is the presumptive nominee, and of course that is accurate, but I'm trying to search my memory, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, that I don't really remember them emphasizing it so much when someone was in the same position as Biden. By that I mean when you pretty much have it wrapped up and everybody's dropped out, they don't usually continue to refer to you as the presumptive nominee. At least I don't remember it being emphasized that much, and I think that says a lot about what the Democratic leadership thinks about Joe Biden. But remember, Bernie was really pissed off when he heard about that New York was going to cancel their primary. Biden is the prohibitive favorite for the nomination to face Donald Trump. There's another term, prohibitive favorite, in November. But New York could be the first state. Hang on one second. I gotta adjust something here. Just a second. Could be the first step in an unlikely path to a contested Democratic convention. We're still hearing about the term contested Democratic convention. I thought that was already off the table. Apparently not. As this article, and remember this is the Catholic News Agency, between two Catholic politicians with national profiles. They're talking about Joe Biden and, of course, not Mario Cuomo, but Governor Cuomo. I talked about his daddy there for a minute. Although Bernie Sanders is officially out of the race, Biden does not yet have an overall majority of convention delegates. As of April 27th, so basically right now, the former vice president has 1,305 of the 1,991 delegates needed to clinch the nomination without a vote, basically. And by that, I mean a vote at the convention. So that's interesting if you put it in perspective. Biden has not actually secured the nomination, and he can't secure the nomination until one of two things happens. Either he gets to that 1991 number, or they vote in the first round of a convention. So those two things have yet to actually happen, right? So it says needed to clinch a first round coronation at the party's convention. New York offered 320 delegates up for grabs total, with 274 going to the primary winner. So Biden would have got at minimum 274, and basically the way the math works out, when you get if you win a congressional district, he would have probably got upwards of close to 300 delegates. Bernie might have gotten a few, but he would have been a long way. You put the totals together, he would have only been roughly about 300 short of clinching the nomination. Pledged to a prize that would have brought Biden closer to the nomination, it says here. If New York's decision triggers other states to cancel their own primaries, think about that. So they're basically saying New York cancel it because of the coronavirus. So now that gives permission to other states to cancel theirs. That could be true. It's entirely possible that Biden could arrive at the Democratic convention without a guarantee of the nomination. That's pretty interesting, especially when you consider what's happening with Joe Biden's campaign right now. I mean, he's not really doing that well. He's struggling to make a cogent thought on TV, even with a script in front of him. And when you think about the Tara Reade situation, what I mean about the accusations against Biden that he sexually molested or assaulted one of his aides back in the 90s, all of that boiling up, the idea that Biden wouldn't automatically have the nomination could get interesting. And it could be that if they cancel, here's something to think about. New York is obviously a big deal with the number of delegates. But if that leads, as this article is speculating, to other states canceling their primaries, that could actually be a sign that they're not too happy with Joe Biden, because it obviously sets up an issue with him being short of the votes. There is no way that he can get to the nomination without a floor vote, potentially a contested floor vote, without the 1991. He's just not automatically. He'd be the presumptive nominee going into the convention. That's very different than the guaranteed nominee. If Biden does not secure a majority in the first ballot, delegates could offer another candidate from the floor. So that begs a couple of questions. First, is there going to be a convention? That's still up in the air. They're talking about a virtual convention. Don't know exactly how that would work, but maybe a gigantic Zoom meeting, I suppose. But is there going to be an actual physical convention where delegates actually show up in one spot, cast vote? And what is the likelihood, no matter what, that they would actually dump Joe Biden? And well, right now, I would say the likelihood of that is next to zero. But if this investigation, or if there is an actual investigation about these Tara Reade accusations against Biden, if that actually starts to get real play on a broader area than just here at John Martin Talks or maybe Fox News, then it could be very significant if they have to actually cast votes for Biden. While Biden performs well in head-to-head polling with Trump, especially in key states like Michigan, Florida, and Pennsylvania, his recent media appearances have been inconsistent. They keep bringing this up, and I understand why. And I'm not saying that the polls are not accurate in a sense that they probably are tabulating the results they're getting, but obviously polls are not always a good predictor of what actually happens. If they were, we wouldn't be saying President Trump, right? Because he was literally had no shot, not even like a small shot. But according to the polling, if you remember, going literally into election day, Trump, it was just a matter of how bad he was going to be beat, right? According to the mainstream media. Now, a lot of us knew going in that we thought Trump was going to win. I thought he was too, just based on what I was seeing. I mean, the excitement level, the commitment, and I still see that, by the way. But these same polls that they keep talking about that Biden is ahead in, here's something I think is the most significant, because you can say whether you trust the polling or not, but keep this in mind. Those same polls, Hillary Clinton was leading by a greater number over Trump than what Biden is. So even if the polls are somehow mathematically true, it doesn't bode well of the eventual outcome based on what actually happened in 2016. In live interviews from his family home, talking about Biden, the presumptive nominee has appeared flustered even under friendly questioning. That's all he's gotten, by the way, friendly questioning. He still has not had one question, to my knowledge, about this Tara Reade affair. Not one. So under friendly questioning, that's an understatement. And during early state primaries, Biden appeared to bristle on the stump at even modest criticism from voters. I'm going to get one out of the vault here. We're going to play this video, and it was one of the last times that Biden was actually out in the public campaigning, and this was on the floor of one of the auto plants in Michigan, campaigning there. And you may remember, he got into this confrontation with a union worker there over the Second Amendment. Check this out right here, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Workers that have been working countless hours under the Trump administration. I'd like you to explain how you plan to not only keep us working, but how you intend on getting the union vote when there is a large portion of the union workers that are gun enthusiasts, and you are actively trying to diminish your Second Amendment right and take away our guns.
You're full of shit.
All right, thank you.
No, shush. Shush. I support the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. And from the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my son's hunt. Guess what? You're not allowed to own any weapon. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds.
So when you were at Beto, when you said you're going to take our guns,
I did not say that. That's not true. I did not say that.
It's a viral video.
It's a viral video like the other ones they're putting out there. They're simply a lie.
Your voice, you said that you're taking the gun.
No, he just clarified it. Wait. And by the way, this guy can change the face of what we're dealing with regard to guns, assault weapons, with regard to dealing with climate change. And I just warning Amy, if I win, I'm coming for it.
We are so glad that you're in Texas and so proud of the campaign that you're running.
Take your AR-14s or what?
Okay, this is not okay.
Hold on.
All right.
And let's
You
be
went
honest,
out
there's
there and
a lot of guys.
You're
wanted.
me, man.
I'm not worried. Hold on.
So much.
Give me a break, man. Don't be such a
You're
worried
pushing
guy.
up on me.
Hey, there's a lot of
Hey.
speak to Joe.
Look, here's the deal.
Go.
Here's the deal. Are you able to own a machine gun? I said, are you able to own one?
Machine guns are illegal.
That's right. So AR-15's illegal.
How is that a machine gun?
No, it's not.
Semi-automatic.
That's good enough. A couple of things there. I should have told you that in the middle of that, they play that viral video that the young man was talking about, where he being Biden, said multiple times, he said it when Beto, I keep calling him Paco, Robert Francis O'Rourke, he's ashamed of the name his mama gave him. Remember in the debates, he said, "You damn right, I'm coming for your guns," and basically saying, "I'm coming for all your guns." Well, Biden, when Beto endorsed him, said, "Well, I'm going to use you as my gun man," basically. And then he reiterated that on the video the young man was talking about there. So Biden clearly has said by his own actions that he's coming for your guns, because he's going to, if you follow through with what he says, he's going to have Beto O'Rourke in charge of his gun policy. I don't know whatever that actually means. It's going to be a new position of guns are. But there's another thing in that video, several things actually, that I think you should pay attention to. One of them, I had to try to pick one that had the best sound quality, but there's others that have a broader shot of that. And at the very beginning, go back and listen to it. Joe Biden is confronting this guy, and you can hear a young woman, and in some videos you can actually see her. She appears to be a young Hispanic woman. She's actually a Biden campaign staffer, maybe an intern or something. And she tries to get Biden to, break out of this conversation, because it's not a productive one, and she's doing her job in that sense. That's what political handlers do. And he turns right to her in very stern even dramatic, even to me, hostile terms, and tells her to shut up. So he tells this young woman to shut up. Now, when you look at Biden's behavior overall and what he's being accused of, I mean, I know it's somewhat of a stretch to put the two together, but clearly he's not, he's not necessarily the nicest guy to women in general. So if you're a woman out there and you're actually behind Joe Biden, look at how he treated that young gal. Would you like to be treated that way? How would you feel if that were your daughter working for him? He tells her, and she's actually doing her job, and he says, shut up. And then, of course, he tells the guy that he's a liar and a jackass. And this is a potential voter, a union member, by the way. And the guy is actually asking Biden legitimate questions, probably a lot tougher than any question Biden will get between now and the November, if assuming he stays that long from the mainstream media. No person in the mainstream media that I've seen so far has asked Biden nearly as tough a direct question as that union worker did. But it's just an amazing video if you go back and look at it to show just what Biden is all about. And by the way, he clearly either is lying or has no idea what the Second Amendment is about. And I hear these Democrats always saying this, and when they say what Biden said about the Second Amendment, to me it shows they're either lying or trying to manipulate you, or they have no clue what they're talking about. And Andrew Cuomo actually said a very similar thing back about guns some time ago. And that is when they bring up, oh, I believe in the Second Amendment. I got a shotgun. I guess I got a shotgun rifle and a four-wheel drive. A country boy can't survive. Like my theme song basically here. When you hear someone defend their belief in the Second Amendment by saying, I love to hunt, I got a shotgun, my boy hunts, and everything else, like Biden said, let me just tell you, some people may not understand this. Some people may disagree, but you'd be wrong. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting or sportsmanship, target practice, and skeet shooting, whatever. The Second Amendment is 100%, not 99.9, but 100% for your protection against tyranny or your self-protection from enemies, both foreign and domestic, crime, whatever you want to lay. It is about you, the individual, having your God-given right to protect yourself. And it was to protect yourself not only from individuals, but your own government if need be. Go back and look at what George Washington said about it. And you could take this to the bank. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. It is about protecting yourself from, yes, the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, but mainly from human beings. And a lot of people won't want to believe that. Yeah, I said it. Questions have been asked about how the former vice president would fare in a live head-to-head debate with Trump, an aggressively provocative debater. Well, now, I don't think anyone really believes that Joe Biden can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump in a debate. Now, he'll be helped a lot by the moderators. There's no question about that. Probably even on Fox News, to be honest with you. I'm sure they're going to have debates on there. I don't expect Biden to get that many tough questions. Now, President Trump will absolutely put him on the spot, and I don't think Biden could handle it. I've not seen a time in this campaign, even with rehearsed stuff, even when he's got a script and a teleprompter in his basement, where he could put together 2 or 3 paragraphs in a row would make any sense whatsoever. So he's not going to hold up well in debates. He didn't hold up well in the Democratic 2020 debates until he got one-on-one with Bernie Sanders, when Bernie Sanders basically refused to take him on. But go back and look at some of the snippets from the debates. Biden, when he was challenged even minutely, fell apart, which brings up a question I have. Is there a guarantee that we're going to have debates? Are we actually going to have debates? I think there's a very real possibility. I would say, right now, if I had to put it, it's probably 70% will have debates and maybe 30% we won't. But if the Biden campaign has their say, there won't be any debates. What good could come out of Joe Biden for Joe Biden debating Donald Trump. So I'm not 100% convinced we'll even have debates. I am 100% convinced that Donald Trump will eat Joe Biden alive, but whether he'll get that chance, I'm not 100% certain on that. More recently, media coverage has begun to re-examine accusations of sexual harassment against Biden by former Hill staffer Tara Reid. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, that's a pretty big statement. They say more recently media coverage has began. What media coverage? Fox News? Yeah, they've covered it some. Right here on shows like John Martin Talks, yeah, we've covered it. I don't remember ABC News saying doodly about it, or certainly CNN and all that. I don't know. So I agree that if the media really picks up on this and does their dadgum job, it could be an issue for Biden. It's not at the moment, but it could change. So that could mean that someone steps in, like as they say right here. New York's own Governor Andrew Cuomo looks the most likely to benefit from a potentially contested nominating convention. Cuomo, of course, he's been widely praised and ridiculed by his handling of the coronavirus and his daily press conferences. I will give him credit for this. He does at least sound coherent for an hour, sometimes two, on TV, talking about whatever he's doing in New York or not doing. I mean, can you imagine Biden actually doing, as far as speaking, what Andrew Cuomo is doing? It's not possible. So I get where the Democrats are coming from with Cuomo. Excuse me. And Cuomo would clearly hold his own better against Donald Trump. Would he beat him in a debate? I don't know. But he would definitely have a better shot than actually Mr. Biden. And never doubt this, Cuomo would jump at the chance to be the presidential nominee. That there is no doubt. Cuomo is having a moment, they say here, as they say, but unless he gets the nomination in a convention, surprise, he will likely be of little help to Democrats in the presidential election. This is an interesting point. First of all, New York's automatically going to the Democrat, right? So that won't matter. Biden has pledged to nominate a woman, so it's not going to be Cuomo, to the ticket VP slot. And Cuomo, they say here, is not a woman. Well, he's got the benefit of one thing. He's a Democrat, so that could change. He could simply present himself as a woman, or he could actually become one and probably get the government to pay for it. If Cuomo has ambition to run in the future, this to me, this paragraph is very telling and very interesting, and I agree with it. And if Cuomo has ambition to run in a future election cycle, he might decide there's little benefit in campaigning for Biden this time around, especially if a Biden win would set up his vice presidential pick for a future election. That's very true. So there's no big incentive for Cuomo to actually come out and campaign for Joe Biden. We're going to talk here in just a minute about Hillary Clinton's endorsement of Joe Biden, and there's similar things there. There's really not a lot of reason for him to actually campaign for Joe Biden. Of course, the New York Democrats' decision to cancel may prove to be, talking about the primary, may prove to be a lone outlier and motivated mostly by the battle against coronavirus. But whatever cost-benefit analysis was used to make the decision to cancel, it is worth asking if the chance, even a remote one, of leaving open the door for a contested convention was regarded as a potential cost or as a benefit. So they're speculating whether it was talked about at all. I bet you that it was, because Democrats are pretty good at conniving and scheming. And there's one group out there I want you to pay special attention to this story, and that's you Bernie bros. You people out there that worked your butt off for Bernie, that believe in the movement. I'm not even going to criticize you. I'm just going to point something out to you. How do you feel about the fact that the one name that never comes up as being a substitute for Joe Biden in any of these news articles, in any conversations you hear speculating with the Democratic establishment figures, people on CNN, there's one name you never ever hear, and that is Bernie Sanders. They never talk about Bernie Sanders being an alternative to Joe Biden. Do you really believe if Joe Biden were to drop out today for some reason, whatever the reason, that they would turn to Bernie Sanders? Now, he would be the most logical choice because clearly Bernie was second place, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. And he was actually on the way to winning the nomination until the Democratic establishment essentially, stabbed him in the back and jumped on board old Bloated Joe. But are you Bernie bros listening to this? Because you're about to support someone, or at least many people are saying you are, Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, that has zero respect for you whatsoever. I'm just saying. Check it out. All right, we're going to move on to Hillary Clinton. Yes, Miss Hillary Clinton. She endorsed Joe Biden. This is from a CNN article. And of course, that's a big shocker, right? Not. I mean, everybody knows. Is there anybody not going to endorse Joe Biden in the Democratic establishment? I don't think so. Hillary Clinton endorsed Joe Biden during a virtual town hall on Tuesday, putting the support of a Democratic standard bearer from 4 years ago behind the former vice president and current presumptive presidential nominee. There's that word again, presumptive. Well, the first question out the box would be, does this help Joe Biden? Does Hillary Clinton's endorsement help him? I don't think so. Now, if she had not endorsed him somehow, either by not doing anything or making some public statement, that could have hurt Joe tremendously. But her support of him was a foregone conclusion. I just don't see how it really changes anything. Are there any people out there that weren't already going to support Biden or were saying, I'm unsure about whether I'm going to support Joe Biden? Oh, Hillary had said she's endorsed him. Well, I'm all in. Is there really anybody out there like that? Hillary's not even in that category herself. But Clinton said, I want to add my voice to the many who have endorsed you, talking about Joe, to be our president. She added in a nod to the coronavirus that this is a moment where we need a leader, a president like Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a leader. Really? Maybe for the credit card companies, he was one heck of a leader. But in general, Joe Biden, a leader? Who really thinks that? Is there anybody who really thinks that Joe Biden is a leader? I don't. Give me some evidence of it. Chime in on whatever Facebook page you're listening to. Let me know if you actually believe that Joe Biden is a leader. Tell me, cite at least one example of leadership beyond the fact that he stood up for credit card companies, and maybe he's a leader if he gets paid enough. So just tell me. I'll respond to it as quickly as I can. Biden called Clinton a friend and thanked her for the wonderful personal endorsement. Well, what else is he going to say? Is he going to, what else could he say? And he wants to live to be an old man. Well, he already is an old man. I'm sure he'd like to live to a ripe old age of his 90s or something like that. And, saying anything mean about Hillary Clinton can get you in a world of trouble. So, it's like, all these Epstein jokes, right? Remember that? Check this. To me, this one's kind of funny, man. We're locked down in isolation, our own safety. And so was Mr. Epstein. You see how that got him. Clinton's endorsement also allows Republicans to dredge up every controversy and attack they used against the 2016 Democratic nominee, something Republicans are eager to do as they look to recreate the strategy that led to President Donald Trump's victory. I'm not so sure that's true either. Although Brad Parscale, Trump's campaign manager, did say this: there's no greater concentration of Democratic establishment than Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton together. President Trump beat her once, and now he'll beat her chosen candidate. And I can see why he's saying that. And yes, Hillary Clinton still invokes a passion for Trump supporters, the MAGA hat wearing sons of guns, you dregs of society, deplorable resistance people, those people, basket of deplorables. Yeah, she does spark us all. And I say us because I'm one of you. She does ruffle our feathers just a bit. But is it really changing anything with the calculus of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump? I just don't see her endorsement as a big deal. As I say, if she hadn't endorsed him, that would have been a big deal. But think about this. Hillary Clinton, she didn't work very hard for herself. Do you really believe that she's going to turn it all on for Joe Biden? I think she's going to do just what she did, give him her blessing. She might make an appearance somewhere if appearances happen. She's probably in a high risk factor for COVID, right? For multiple reasons. But I imagine COVID's probably, that'd be one way to kill it, right? Get threatened Hillary Clinton with it. But she didn't campaign hard for herself. I don't see her, even if the COVID wasn't an issue, I don't see her actually getting out working the stump for Joe Biden, really. And about this female VP deal, a couple of things. First of all, I don't think it's going to be Hillary. I don't think there's any way it's going to be Hillary. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But assuming that I'm right about that these other female, because Joe's already said he's going to pick a female VP, right? Well, do you really think that any of those female VPs, whoever they may end up being, if it's not Hillary, would want to be overshadowed by Hillary? I mean, to me, that is an issue for them. I don't think they would really relish that factor at all. And the same thing actually goes for Obama, for Joe Biden. I do believe that Obama endorsement of Joe Biden was by far the biggest endorsement, and he had to have it. But I also think that Obama waited a long time, which actually hurt Joe Biden in the long run. But Obama will overshadow Joe Biden everywhere they go. So Hillary and Obama, both of them out campaigning for Biden and whoever his VP pick is, I don't think that's a very good picture. Clinton said of the former vice president, he has the experience, he knows what needs to be done, he can repair the damage that he would be inheriting. So I get a kick out of all these people. Biden's been in office for 50 years. He's literally been running for president for that long because he's been wanting to be president since he got in the Senate. This guy has been in the highest levels of power in Washington for 50 years. And now he's going to fix it. He's part of the problem. The deal with the Biden, man, is what about that? Remember there's a show out there, What a Fifth Grader Knows? I don't think Joe Biden could actually pass that test. If you think I'm wrong, apparently he didn't get too good homeschooled. Do you remember this little gaffe, if you will, when he was running during the primary time? Check this out. And we played there we go.
These truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
You know the thing. He can't even recite even the basic preamble to the Declaration of Independence. You know the thing. I mean, this guy couldn't pass what a fifth grader knows. There is no way. But I mean, then this guy is going to be president. There's several videos that should be run continuously. You don't even have to create them. They're already done. Biden created his own videos that you should have to explain yourself if you're going to vote for that guy. Clinton recalled during Tuesday's event how she was Secretary of State. That when she was Secretary of State, they talk about her and Joe standing breakfast date once a week where they would talk often about work, but also about family and their lives. Clinton concluded her endorsement with a hope for Biden. She said, "I wish he were president right now." Really? Is there anyone that actually believes that? Now, let me read that again. She's saying that she wishes that Joe Biden was president right now. There's only one person she wishes was president right now, and it dadgum sure ain't Joe Biden. It's her. I mean, to even think that we believe that, man. No, and FYI for you, this gets to the Hillary VP pick. Even Joe is not stupid enough to pick her as his VP. And this meme of Hillary pretty much says it all. Suicide or homicide? what makes the difference? Joe Biden would have what would Joe Biden's life expectancy be if Hillary Clinton actually became the VP? Because there's some people that speculate that whoever he picks for VP is really going to be the de facto president. You know, that Biden may either step down or basically they'll be calling the shots like a puppet master behind the screen. And I agree with that. That's certainly true. But if Hillary was his VP, I mean, how long after he had his inauguration would he be gone? I mean, yeah, wow. Think about that for a moment. All right, we're going to move on to our final story here, and this is about China. China is upset that Donald Trump and other countries now are starting to blame them for the coronavirus, and even more upset at hinting at the fact that there may be reparations being sought. This is from a New York Times article. China mounts aggressive defense to calls for coronavirus compensation. China is pushing back against a growing chorus of voices around the world calling for the country to pay compensation for the damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic, which originated in the Chinese city of Wuhan. This is the New York Times. So is the New York Times actually calling it the Kung Flu? I mean, they're actually saying here, let me read this last part again. Damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic, which originated in the Chinese city of Wuhan. Thus, the China flu, the Wuhan flu, they're actually admitting, the New York Times, that it came from Wuhan? Because it doesn't sound, in the past, they've been like, you can't say that. It's racism to say that. Maybe enough people have been sick at the New York Times that they're probably changing their mind. A spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Jing Shang, said at a news briefing on Tuesday, politicians in the United States are lying through their teeth. So someone, man, I tell you what, they got big cojones in China, man, to literally say that the people in the United States, political figures, I'm sure they're talking about Mr. Trump in general, are lying through their teeth when trying to blame China for this virus. I mean, wow, man. So if China is not to blame, who is to blame? Well, I think we know the answer to that, right? It's you MAGA hat wearing sons of guns that are to blame. If you don't believe me, just listen to the president of China. He'll tell you. He'll set you straight. Check it out. We got that meme? There we go. There's the president of China telling you it wasn't me. It was two white guys in MAGA hats. That's who started the virus. They probably were going around, with some bleach or whatever, and they started. So MAGA hat wearing sons of guns from either Illinois or maybe right here where I'm from in Florida went to China and started this dadgum thing. I mean, you might as well blame Trump for it all. The spokesman's comments came one day after President Trump suggested that the United States would seek substantial compensation for Beijing handling of the coronavirus outbreak. Now, I agree that China should be held accountable and should be held accountable financially. But how exactly do you do that? It's not as easy as you think. Now, there are multiple ways we could potentially do it, tariffs, all those types of things. But keep in mind that there's one thing to punish the Chinese government. It's another to punish the Chinese people. We got to walk a little bit of a line there because we want to encourage, like the Hong Kong dissidents and everything else, to actually stand up against this oppressive government on their own. And believe me, there's some indication that once this virus downgrades a little bit more, that China is very worried about that. So we got to be careful about what would actually be effective and what we could really do. Now, I was listening. I want to give credit where credit is due. It may have come from somewhere else, but the first person I have heard say what I'm about to say is Sean Hannity. I heard him on one of his shows talk about that. What about the debt, our deficit money that China owns? They own a pretty good portion, over $1 trillion, they say, of our deficit is owned by. We just sought debt forgiveness. What if you just said, look, we're not paying it? Now, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. I'll say, could that impact? Because I don't want to harm the United States. But that would clearly be one way to get that money. Just basically say, look, our debt is paid. in full. I think it's an interesting idea. I'd like to know more details about it, and we'll check that out. But on the surface, that sounds like a reasonable way to do it. Richard McGregor, a China analyst with the Lowry Institute in Sydney, that is in Australia, said Beijing is mounting an all-hands-on-deck, no-holds-barred global diplomatic effort to stem any move anywhere to censor it over its handling of the initial coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan. The big problem with China, and forget about the fact that it looks like that it was developed in a lab. I mean, that's bad. If that's absolutely true, then that is a game changer without a doubt. And that is becoming more and more of a likely possibility. But the one thing we know for sure is that China knew much more than they were letting on. They knew early on that this was a very virulent virus, and they basically kept quiet about it. And beyond keeping quiet about it, knowing how prevalent it was and how infectious it was and how many people in Wuhan specifically were impacted by this, China not only downplayed it and outright lied, but they allowed people to travel from China to different parts of the world, including all over Europe and especially Italy, the hottest spot in Europe, directly from Wuhan. And in one of his press briefings the other day, Cuomo said something absolutely spectacularly stupid. He said that the virus that impacted, the coronavirus that impacted New York didn't come from China. It came from Europe, which, on the surface is partially true. I wouldn't doubt that many of the people who came in and infected people in New York came from Europe. But where did the Europeans get the virus? From China. So, I mean, to basically excuse China as saying that the hottest spot in the United States didn't catch the virus from China, but from Europe, would imply to some people, because some people believe you should, drink Lysol or whatever, and that kind of thing. So human beings, I mean, isn't that false information right there to actually give people, American citizens, the idea that maybe this thing started in Europe? Because Cuomo he's no dummy. I don't like the guy, but he's not a dummy. He knows good and well that the virus came to New York via China. It may have leapfrogged and hopscotched its way through Europe to get to New York, but the root cause of the virus and the root source of the virus, and no credible person can dispute this, came from China. And so it just is. But this spokesman, this gentleman from the, let me get his name again, Lowry Institute in Sydney, he went on to say, he stressed that the Chinese government sees this as a pivotal moment to make a generational advance in the global position at the expense of Washington. So the Democrats and the progressive media, they are consistently making us weaker because they non-incessantly attack Donald Trump. They don't want to attack the source of this. They give China a pass. They give the World Health Organization a pass. How many times has the World Health Organization been wrong about this virus? And they're in China's pocket. At a news briefing on Monday, Mr. Trump put forth the idea that China could have prevented the coronavirus from spreading beyond its borders. Mr. Trump said, "We believe it could have been stopped at the source." Is there any real doubt about that? It certainly would have been good to try that. He said, and I like this part, he said that they said stop at the source without offering an explanation of the steps the country could have taken. So it's another way of saying without evidence. I mean, they always say this, man. So how about the evidence that China has been lying from the start? Do we not know that? The mainstream media knows that. The media is making us weaker too. How about YouTube? I talked about this the other day. There was a couple of doctors, researchers that created this video about California and talked to basically, it's about an hour long, but in essence, they're saying that there's much more virus in California than we're being led to believe, and thus the death rate is actually much, much lower. Now, as President Trump says, any one death is one too many, But the reality is, it appears as we get more and more evidence that the actual mortality rate is much, much lower, down in the tenths of a percentile. And yet we shut the entire country down over it. And that was one of their points. Well, Tucker Carlson had snippets of that video on his show. Well, YouTube, is my understanding, has removed that entire video because they say that it is contradictory to what the World Health Organization says. Now, the World Health Organization has been wrong across the board. Now, I'm not saying that experts don't have a right to be wrong, because this is a work in progress. It simply is. But still, you should be held accountable for being wrong. If you're going to hold these doctors to a standard and remove their video and say that only stuff from like the World Health Organization, who was wrong on masks, they said that masks did nothing. Now, I don't know if I agree with that or not. They said that there was nothing to worry about the spread coming from China. We know that's not nonsensical. They said there was no need for travel bans. And now the world, Donald Trump was the first, doesn't get near enough credit for that, but pretty much borders have mattered now all over the world. There are travel bans. The World Health Organization has been wrong on multiple fronts. Without question, they've been wrong. Maybe they've been involved. I don't know if you heard this. Biden came out on one of his videos in the last day or so, and he used the term world economic intercourse. He said, when we engage in world economic intercourse, maybe that's the problem. Maybe they're just screwed up. I don't know. I just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. So we're supposed to take the word of the World Health Organization, but these two doctors that are presenting a contrarian view, we don't even get to hear them, where they're taken off the platform, period. That, ladies and gentlemen, to me is actually more dangerous than hearing some information that may or may not be true. I mean, we need to hear, we need to have debates. Debates don't imply that both sides are 100% right, but it's a debate. And we're not having a debate on many, many major issues. Let me check my time. Pretty much out of time. So check out this article from about China and seeking reparations. One thing I'll say, this opportunity right now could present itself to be for the world to basically take on China and stop them from what they're trying to do, which is literally world domination. So maybe something good can come out of this catastrophe, and we could stand up to China, at least here in the United States. Hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it and share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. But above all else, like I say each and every day, have a blessed day. Thank you.